Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you the very habits you laugh off today could be the same ones silently robbing you of your future? We wake up each morning, scroll endlessly, procrastinate, lie to ourselves with just one more time, not realizing these tiny daily choices are carving our destiny brick by brick. Now I'm not here to judge. Unless binge watching cat videos at 2 a.m. is a criminal offense, then yes, I'm calling you out. But seriously, have you ever paused long enough to ask, what am I losing every time I choose comfort over commitment? You see, these bad habits don't crash through the front door with chaos, they sneak in through routine, dressed as relaxation, disguised as harmless fun, and before we know it, they've stolen our dreams in exchange for a few moments of ease. This is where your story can change, but only if you're willing to confront the villain you've been feeding daily. And by the end of this talk, you'll know exactly how to starve it. Small habits today become the chains of your future. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but it holds a truth that most people don't realize until it's too late. Think about your average day, the little things you do without much thought. Waking up and grabbing your phone, skipping breakfast because you're late, putting off your workout until tomorrow, saying, just 5 more minutes to avoid starting that important task. None of these actions seem dangerous in isolation. They feel normal, routine, maybe even deserved after a long day. But over time, they form patterns, and those patterns silently shape your life. We often think of life-changing decisions as big, dramatic moments, but the real transformation or destruction happens in the quiet repetition of small choices. Habits by nature are invisible architects. They don't shout, they whisper. They tell you it's okay to cheat the system, to skip the hard thing, to do what feels good now rather than what builds a better later. That one skipped workout turns into a week. That week turns into a lifestyle. Before you know it, the person you thought you'd become feels further and further away, and you can't even remember how you got off track. The scary part is how comfortable it feels. Bad habits don't bring pain immediately. In fact, they often feel good in the moment. Scrolling through your phone feels like a break. Eating junk food gives a temporary dopamine hit. Putting off a difficult task reduces your anxiety for now. But over time, these small decisions start chaining you to a version of yourself you never intended to become. And because they feel so normal, you don't even notice you're being locked in. Imagine someone putting a thread around your wrist every day. It's light, you barely feel it. But after weeks and months of this, those threads become a rope, eventually a chain. And one day you wake up wanting to move forward, to break free, to make a change, but the chain is too tight, too strong, and you realize you've trapped yourself. Not all at once, slowly, silently, willingly. Even your self-talk becomes a part of the habit. You start believing, this is just who I am, or I'll never be disciplined, or it's too late now. And that belief system becomes the lock on the chain. The longer the habit stays, the more it reshapes how you think, how you act, what you expect from yourself, and what you tolerate in your life. You stop dreaming big. You stop trying. You start settling. The saddest part is how many people never realize it's happening. They live in a loop, wondering why nothing ever changes, why their goals always feel just out of reach. They don't see that the real enemy isn't lack of talent or opportunity. It's the quiet, comfortable habits they repeat without question. And it's not just physical habits, it's emotional habits too. The habit of doubting yourself, the habit of overthinking, the habit of avoiding discomfort. All of it stacking up. It's not dramatic, it's not loud, but it is deadly to your growth, your goals, and your potential. The chain forms slowly, day by day, decision by decision. And the worst part? You're the one building it, link by link, believing all the while that you're free. Comfort is the silent killer of potential. It doesn't arrive like a storm, it slips in quietly, wrapping itself around your life in the name of ease, routine, and familiarity. It tells you you're doing fine, even when you know you're not growing. It convinces you that staying where you are is safer than chasing where you could be. And in that space of emotional safety, your dreams begin to fade not because they weren't possible, but because you never made yourself uncomfortable enough to pursue them. Comfort tells you to hit snooze instead of waking up early to work on your goals. It tells you that tomorrow is just as good as today. It whispers that failure is painful, so it's better not to try at all. It rewards you with temporary relief while slowly stealing the long-term rewards that come from growth, challenge, and effort. You start choosing what's easy instead of what's right, and every time you do, you strengthen a version of yourself that settles instead of strives. The danger of comfort is that it never feels dangerous. It feels good. It feels earned. After all, isn't life supposed to be enjoyable? Isn't rest important? Yes, but comfort becomes toxic when it shifts from recovery to avoidance, when it becomes your default setting, when you're no longer resting to recharge, but hiding from effort, decisions, risk, and change. That's when it begins to choke your potential, slowly but effectively. We often admire people who've achieved great things, not realizing the massive discomfort they had to endure to get there. The early mornings, the tough conversations, the repeated failures, the moments when quitting would have been so much easier than continuing. What separates them isn't talent or luck, it's their willingness to be uncomfortable repeatedly for a purpose greater than ease. They chose growth over convenience. They faced fear instead of avoiding it, and that's why they became who they are. Comfort will never push you. It will never challenge you. It will never tell you to dig deeper, to question your limits, to risk looking foolish, or to try again after you've failed. Growth lives in friction and pressure, in uncertainty, in the edge where you want to stop but push forward anyway. But when comfort takes over, you stop stepping toward that edge. You stop evolving. You settle for a version of life that looks okay from the outside, but feels unfulfilled on the inside. Sometimes comfort looks like staying in a job you hate because it pays the bills. Sometimes it's staying in a relationship where you're not valued because being alone feels scarier. Sometimes it's never starting that business, never writing that book, never speaking up, never taking the first step because deep down, comfort has convinced you that the risk isn't worth the pain of change. But the real pain isn't in the change, it's in the regret that follows a life lived small. You weren't built to live in comfort zones. You were made to expand, to reach, to create, to challenge yourself in ways that reveal who you truly are. That version of you, the one capable of more, the one with gifts the world hasn't seen yet, will never show up in a place where everything feels safe and easy. It's forged in discomfort, in action, in deliberate choices to step away from what's known and into what's possible. Comfort will never ask more from you, but your future will. Your dreams will. Your calling will. The life you truly want isn't hiding behind another lazy evening, another easy excuse, or another passive day. It's waiting in the uncomfortable, the unknown, the unfamiliar. And the longer you let comfort lead, the further you drift from the person you were always meant to become. Every excuse strengthens the habit you're trying to break. It may feel harmless, even reasonable to say, just this once, or I'll start tomorrow, but every time you give in to that voice, you're reinforcing the very behavior you're trying to escape. Excuses act like glue, silently bonding you to your old patterns, giving them more control, more power, more presence in your life. You think you're making a small exception, but what you're actually doing is casting a vote for who you've always been, not who you want to become. Excuses are seductive because they sound logical. You're tired, you're busy, you had a hard day, it's not the right time, you'll be better prepared later. These reasons don't feel like weakness, they feel like fairness, like self-care, like being realistic. But underneath those soft words is a hard truth. Excuses don't protect you, they paralyze you. They don't give you relief, they give you delay. And every time you delay, you give your old habit another day to grow stronger, to tighten its grip, to become more automatic and harder to break. Habits are built through repetition, not intention. You can want to change. You can even believe you're serious about it. But every time you choose an excuse over action, you're rehearsing the habit you hate. You're practicing staying stuck. You're telling your mind, this is who I am. This is what I do. And your mind listens. It adapts. It normalizes the pattern. So the next time, the excuse comes quicker, easier, smoother until one day, You don't even call it an excuse anymore. You call it life. The habit you're trying to break doesn't care about your reasons. It only cares about results. And every skipped workout, every broken promise to yourself, every "I'll do it later" feeds it. Even worse, excuses teach your brain that your word can't be trusted, that your goals are optional, that your comfort matters more than your commitment. This erodes confidence. You begin to doubt yourself, not because you're incapable, but because you've trained yourself to retreat when it's time to rise. Excuses don't just protect the habit, they disguise it. They shift blame away from discipline and onto circumstance. You stop seeing the habit as the problem and start believing it's just how things are. You start saying things like, "I'm just not motivated," "I don't have time," or "I'll never be like those people." And with every excuse, the habit digs in deeper, becoming part of your identity. Soon, it's not just something you do, it's how you see yourself. That shift is dangerous because once you believe a behavior is part of who you are, changing it feels impossible. Change demands honesty. It demands you see excuses for what they really are: delays wrapped in comfort, lies disguised as logic. If you want to break a habit, you must start by breaking the cycle of justification. That means acting when you don't feel like it, showing up when it's inconvenient, and staying consistent even when results are invisible. It's not about being perfect. It's about refusing to let the same excuse win again and again. There is a moment every day where you will face a choice: comfort or commitment. And in that moment, the excuse will always be ready. It will be tempting, persuasive, and easy to accept. But every time you say yes to that excuse, you're saying no to your future, no to progress, no to self-respect. The habit you want to kill is fed by those tiny moments of surrender, those brief lapses that feel innocent but are incredibly destructive in the long run. The real battle isn't with the habit, it's with the voice that tells you it's okay to keep it alive just a little longer. You can't build a new life with old patterns. No matter how big your dreams are, how clear your vision is, or how deeply you desire change, if you keep operating from the same mindset, the same routines, and the same habits that shaped your past, you'll only recreate more of what you're trying to escape. Transformation doesn't come from inspiration alone. It comes from disruption, breaking the cycle of behaviors that kept you stuck, even if those behaviors feel safe or familiar. You can't expect a different result while doing the same things. Change requires discomfort, and most people never build a new life because they refuse to let go of the identity that fits the old one. Old patterns are like invisible scripts. They guide your thoughts, your reactions, your choices without you even realizing it. Maybe you always shut down when criticized. Maybe you always procrastinate when things get hard. Maybe you say yes to everyone and put yourself last. These behaviors may have helped you survive once, but survival mode is not where greatness is built. You want more, but you keep showing up as the same version of yourself that was shaped by fear, by insecurity, by past failures. And that version cannot carry the weight of the future you're trying to create. People often wonder why change feels impossible, why they keep falling back into the same loops. The reason is simple. Your actions are loyal to your patterns, not your potential. Your patterns shape what you believe is possible. If you always react with anger, avoidance, or doubt, you're reinforcing a mindset that is stuck in the past. And the longer you live by those patterns, the harder they are to see, because they start to feel like just who you are. But they're not. They're just well-practiced responses, and anything that's practiced can be unlearned. A new life requires new standards. It demands intentionality in how you think, speak, move, and act. You can't create abundance with a scarcity mindset. You can't create love while carrying unhealed wounds. You can't achieve peace while entertaining chaos. Every level of growth asks you to leave behind something that no longer serves you, even if it once did. That could mean distancing yourself from certain people, unlearning destructive self-talk, setting boundaries where none existed before, or stepping into challenges you would have once avoided. It's not easy, but it's necessary. We often cling to our old patterns because they feel comfortable, even when they hurt us. There's a strange security in the familiar. Even dysfunction can feel safe when it's all you've known. But comfort is not the goal, freedom is. And freedom only comes when you stop letting the past run the show. You cannot rewrite your story with the same pen that wrote the chapters you're trying to forget. You need a new strategy, a new rhythm, a new internal narrative that says, I am not who I used to be. You might fail, you might slip, you might hear the old voices in your head telling you that you'll never change. But every time you choose a new response, a new habit, a new belief, you're building something different. You're shifting your identity from the inside out. And that shift creates momentum. It creates evidence. It shows you that change is not only possible, it's happening now. But it can't happen if you keep dancing with the past, if you keep feeding the same behaviors that brought you pain, if you keep playing small in a life that was meant to be expansive. Patterns don't just repeat themselves, they reproduce outcomes. If your life isn't changing, your patterns aren't either. And if you truly want a new life, you have to make the courageous decision to let go of everything that's holding you back, even if it feels like a part of who you are. Because it's not who you are, it's who you've been trained to be.